It's great to see y'all this morning. We are in a series called How the Mighty Fall. And we're not talking about them out there. We're talking about us. We're talking about how is it that folks can have fiery faith and then as the years wane on, as time goes on, end up where their faith is cold or not at all. I've been warning y'all about what I'm calling a Trojan horse, the whole idea of things that kind of look good, that sneak in, but ultimately are the enemy, things that will destroy your faith. And last week, if you remember, the Trojan horse was watch out for the Trojan horse of popular opinion. It might be what you want to hear, but it often is not what you need to hear. And so this week, I want to start out with a question. It's easy to answer. You actually don't have to answer it. Do you like to feel good? Do you like to feel good? Now, again, you don't have to answer it. I've never met anyone ever who doesn't like to feel good. Now, what makes you feel good may vary, but everybody likes to feel good. And so I kind of want to start out by talking about how that process kind of works for us in the brain. I got a very simple illustration here, nothing like what Malcolm would do, but just follow me here. This line here represents what it means to feel normal. Okay, just a normal, everyday kind of a feeling. Hopefully you're at this or better right now. It involves a small amount of this neurotransmitter in your brain called dopamine. But then you can actually raise feeling normal with good music, fresh baked cookies, a warm hug, exercise, laughter, etc. When those things happen, these neurotransmitters called dopamine increase, and you have a sense of feeling happy. It goes from normal to feeling happy. And this is generally how it works for all human beings, male and female, no matter where you live, no matter what your ethnic background is, no matter what gender you are. This is how it works. It's basic biology. But there are ways, we have discovered ways to, if you would, shortcut the process. And so this is one of the problems, if you would, with some illicit drugs. What they do is you take this pill or something like it, and what it does is it produces this effect that, if you would, fires the dopamine. All of a sudden you get this rush of dopamine, and the result is you feel right away, you feel happy. And not only is it happiness, a lot of times it's a happiness that's maybe even a little bit higher. It's a euphoria. Now, as you can imagine, feeling good is addictive. We all want to feel good, right? That's why for a lot of us, right, when you had one donut, it tasted good, so you ate another one. That's kind of how that works. And so what happens is in the brain, when you take this shortcut and it feels really good, what do you desire? More of the shortcut. Now, remember I warned you about the older brother and sister who gives you good advice, and don't fall for that? Because what they don't tell you, because they don't know, is that there is a problem. And the problem is that when you do this over and over again, remember, your body naturally produces dopamine when it does other things. But if you bring in this fake thing that fires the dopamine, guess what your body does? Your body begins to, it can cause the brain to produce or absorb or transmit less dopamine. So in effect, if you start taking this shortcut, you have a new normal. Look at this next slide here, a new normal. So now your normal is no longer at normal. Why? Because your body does not produce that dopamine naturally. It's waiting for the shortcut. So where do you rest? Everybody else rests at normal. Not happy, just normal. But where do you now rest? Where does your brain now rest? Where most of us, it's a little bit of sadness. That's where your brain rests. So now you need the shortcut to feel normal. Now, you don't want to just feel normal. None of us want to just feel normal. So what do you have to do? You need a bigger shortcut to feel happy. But what's wrong with the bigger shortcut? It resets you to a lower normal. Depression. This, by the way, is why it's hard to get off drugs. Because when you get off it, your body doesn't all of a sudden start producing dopamine normally. So you are depressed when you're off of that drug. Nobody wants to be depressed. So the shortcut that makes you feel happy ends up to be a shortcut to depression. Ouch, Trojan horse. There's a lot of other kind of shortcuts. I'm not going to go through them all, but there's the shortcut of cheating, whether it's cheating in school, cheating in taxes. There's body steroids, right? There's the compromise shortcut to just please the crowd at the moment, body image surgery, all kinds of shortcuts. The problem with these shortcuts is that when we take them, we try to make life easier. We often strip life of the things that actually make it worth living. But in the moment, at that time, it seems like, woo, this is a win. I didn't have to study and I got a good grade. So today we're going to talk about this. Watch out for the Trojan horse in terms of our faith of an easy religion or easy period. An easy commitment usually ends up to be no commitment at all. An easy commitment usually ends up to be no commitment at all. So let me just do a really simple review. Remember, last week we talked about a good beginning. Not for Rehoboam, but a good beginning for Jeroboam. Right? That's the guy that Solomon had used to hire to be over all his workers. And remember in verse 31, it said a prophet came to Jeroboam. Then he said to Jeroboam, take 10 pieces for yourself, for this is what the Lord, the God of Israel, says. See, I'm going to tear the kingdom out of Solomon's hand and give you 10 tribes. Summary, I'm going to make you a king. Yoo-hoo! Then he tells him why he's going to make him a king. In verse 33, I will do this because they being Solomon and those who follow him, have forsaken me and worship the goddess of Sidonians, Shemoth, the god of the Moabites, Molech, the god of the Ammonites, and they have not walked in my ways, nor done right as in my eyes, nor kept my statutes and laws, as David, Solomon's father, did. This is why this is going to happen. And then the verses right after that, he actually says, hey, this is what David did. David did what was right in my eyes, kept my statutes and laws. And then he makes an agreement with Jeroboam through the prophet. He says, okay, here's the deal. You read it yourself in verse 37. It says, however, as for you, I will take you, Jeroboam, I will rule over all that your heart, and you will rule over all that your heart desires. And you will be king over Israel. If you do whatever I command you and walk in my ways and do what is right in my eyes by keeping my statutes and commands, as David my servant did, I will be with you. I will build you a dynasty as enduring as the one I built for David, and I will give Israel to you. That's those 10 tribes. That is a deal. So in really simple, here's the summary. This is really simple. Here's the deal. God says, I will make you a king. I will give you your heart's desire. I will be with you, and I will build not only for you, but I will build your family into a lasting dynasty that will not end. Sign me up. Sign me up. Now, I will say that there's a qualifier in this. He says, I'm going to do all this if you, and he says, walk in my ways, do what is right in my eyes, and keep my statutes and laws. Now, this is the very thing, remember, that Solomon did not do, that he's being judged for, which is why Jeroboam gets the opportunity in the first place. So if you're playing a sport and the person in the position that you're second string to commits an error, and the coach says, okay, you're in, whatever you do, don't fumble, whatever you do, don't, whatever, miss the free throw, whatever. What's the one thing you can't do? That thing. That thing. Right then, somebody should have pulled Jeroboam aside and said, hey, Jeroboam, watch out for the Trojan horse of an easy religion. Because an easy commitment usually ends up to be no commitment at all. But he doesn't have an advisor. And if you remember the story that we talked about last week, he ends up in Egypt, and then God does exactly what he says he's going to do. The Rehoboam, remember, listens to the wrong people, the popular opinion, and the kingdom is split. And God is faithful to his word, because when Rehoboam escapes, he gets back to Jerusalem, he gathers his army. And it is quite the army, and he's going to go and he's going to take the north by force. But God sends a prophet to Rehoboam and says, no, you're not going to. I'm not going to bless it. You're going to lose. And so Rehoboam doesn't attack Jeroboam in the north. Jeroboam is set up as king over the larger section, over the 10 tribes rather than just the other 2. He builds 2 very strategic cities. One's his home, the other one's militarily just the right place. And all of a sudden he finds himself blessed by God in a situation he really didn't deserve, and he's secure. But it's in the midst of this security, and that's an important point. It's in the midst of this security. It's in the midst of this, I'm on top of the world, that Jeroboam begins to worry. Why does he begin to worry? Because now he's got something to protect. Now he's got something to protect. I can tell you, I get the pleasure, the blessing to be on the board of United Christians International. And when I first started there, we met, everything seemed to happen under a little thatched roof, open air, that was smaller than this stage. And like they said, none of us knew what was going on or how to do what, but we dreamed big, and God blessed it. And now it's very tempting to, as we get together and we're looking at all the way through high school, we're looking at university where folks, the prominent folks in Port-au-Prince where it's not safe for sending their kids there. And it's easy to just begin to go, okay, we got responsibilities now. I mean, back then we could just fool around, but now we got to get serious and begin to try to protect it and forget how we got there in the first place. And this is what happens to Jeroboam, verse 26. So Jeroboam thought to himself, he says, the kingdom will now likely revert to the house of David. In other words, the people that are in where I'm king are going to go back to the other side. Why? If these people go up to offer sacrifices at the temple of the Lord in Jerusalem, they will again give their allegiance to the Lord, Rehoboam, the king of Judah, and they will kill me and return to the king of Rehoboam. So really short, it's really simple. Okay? At least once a year, everyone traveled to Jerusalem, which happened to be in the southern kingdom, right? The kingdom he's not a king of, to worship God, the God, by the way, who set him up as king. And then they would come back. And now that he has something to protect, he's going, you know what? I'm a little worried that they're visiting the southern kingdom at all. And so I need to do something about this. I need to do something. And it's as if he forgets again how he got there in the first place. Trust is hard. Taking back control is the shortcut. It's the easiest thing. To trust is difficult. And so we often find ourselves, just like Jeroboam, taking the shortcut. So here's Jeroboam's solution, an easy religion. Verse 28, after seeking advice. So again, he makes the same mistake Rehoboam did that got him in power. What do you guys want? What works for you? So the people gave him advice. It says, after seeking advice, the king made 2 golden calves. He said to the people, it is too much for you to go up to Jerusalem. Here are your gods, O Israel, who brought you up out of Egypt. One he set up in Bethel, that's at the lower part of the kingdom, and one he set up in Dan, that's the upper part of his kingdom. Now, basically what he's doing is he's like, he hasn't completely abandoned God. This is really, really important here. He doesn't switch gods. He just says, I want to make this God thing easier for you. So I know you go all the way down to Jerusalem and to worship at the temple. Now in the temple, there's this place called the Holy of Holies. By the way, no one's allowed in there but the high priest. And in the Holy of Holies is the Ark of the Covenant, this gold box, if you would. And he says, wouldn't it be better, A, if it was closer to you? And B, rather than something you can't see, what if you could actually go to the place you can worship and you could see the holy item that represents your God? Wouldn't that be better? And everyone goes, oh, yeah, that would be better, right? And then later on in the passage, I won't read it, but later on in the passage, he says, you know how we're only allowed to choose leaders from one family? What about the other families? That stinks, right? I mean, by the way, we're using the same logic today. Aren't these people just as qualified as those people? What do you have to say about what do you have against them? Well, the only thing against them is that for whatever reason, God said this family. But Jeroboam goes, no, just pick from anyone. I'm sure at the beginning they were somewhat spiritually qualified, but they lowered the standard. And then they came up with their own holiday, because obviously this holiday, everybody was used to going to Jerusalem. So you know what? It doesn't really matter that it's on this date and you celebrate it this way. Let's just do it here. We can throw a better party. He just twists it just a little. And the end result of this easy religion is, verse 30, and this thing became a sin. People began to miss the mark. The people went as far as Dan, the other place, to worship the one there. Now, the one, by the way, is Yahweh. It is Yahweh. It's still God. See, this is not just an easy other religion. It's an easy, in their day, people of God, Israel religion. In our day, there are easy Christian religions. The easy thing often becomes wrong thing because it voids the important thing. See, the important thing wasn't whether you worshiped in Jerusalem or you worshiped in Dan. The important thing is to say God is worth making the trip to Jerusalem. That's what they missed. The hard thing took commitment, and they went the easy thing. They fell for the Trojan horse. Watch out for the Trojan horse of an easy religion. An easy commitment usually ends up as no commitment at all. That's how the mighty fall. So in this last part, let me tie this up. I want to talk about the good stuff. The good stuff, I'm talking about the good stuff at life. We all started with, do you want to feel good? We all said, yes, we want to feel good. Now, wise people, remember last week we talked about wisdom? Wise people know that the good stuff is not stuff and it is not status. It's not stuff and it's not status. Wise people know this. By the way, most wise people know this because they went after both those things. And either it eluded them and they saw in others who got it that they weren't happy, that they didn't feel good, or they actually got, this happens in the Bay Area a lot, people actually finally get, after years and years and years and years, they finally get everything they wanted, the house, the car, the status, the whatever it is, the retirement account, and they're empty. Yeah. And then they're wise. It's a little too late then, which is why I want you guys part of this series, because I don't want you guys to end up to be the idiots that we've been. Right. I want you to be smarter, wiser, if you would. So let me give you 3 principles about attaining the good stuff in this life. First of all, the good stuff in life does not come easy. It does not, and I know you did not want to hear that, did you? You wanted me to tell you, oh, it's a simple 3-step process. It's a simple 3-step process. The good stuff in life is usually harder to get, and it's, by the way, it's more expensive. Right? Here's something you're going to learn that hopefully the folks on this side have learned, but I can tell you some of them haven't. And that is, you will buy something cheap 3 or 4 times when you could have just bought the good thing the one time. That's how it works. It's cheap for a reason. It's a replacement there, where if you just saved a little longer, waited a little longer, and bought the good thing, you only have to buy it once, and there's a lot less headache. There's another principle of this. The good stuff doesn't come easy, and that is, I know a lot of folks that move somewhere else because they can get a nice house, and there's nothing, by the way, wrong with that, right? But the good stuff in life is your community and your friends. And if you go to somewhere new, right? Kenny Rogers and Dolly Parton have this song. It says, "You cannot make old friends." And what that means is you can't show up to somewhere new and all of a sudden have the kind of relationship that it took you 5, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years to develop. Now, again, I'm not saying you shouldn't move, because usually in the Bay Area, if you retire, you have to move. I'm just saying the reality is that the good stuff does not come easy. It takes a long time of working out relationships. Let me tell you, you can find a church. You got to be careful of churches that say, hey, let's follow on this God stuff. Basically, just be a good person and love people. And they lower the bar. They lower the bar. Be careful. Because if it's easy, it won't ultimately give life. It will steal your life, even in the church. But the good news, by the way, is Jesus didn't come and say, you know what, I'm going to make life easy for you. Jesus came in life and he says, I'm going to give you the power to help you do the hard things in life. I'm going to give you the power to help you do the hard things. Why? Because it's the hard things in life that bring the beauty, that bring the wonderful things. If you avoid what's hard, you really are avoiding life. Principle number 2, the good stuff in life is a result rather than a commodity. It's a result rather than a commodity. Commodity is like something you can buy, right? Basically, and this is true of everyone. We like to pick on the younger generation, but the fact is we're all in this generation and it's true of us. And what's true of us is this: we want it to feel good now. We want the car now. We want the house now. We want the body we want now. And because of that, we try all these shortcuts, which usually ultimately end us up in debt, stress, they fall apart. The good stuff is usually a result of hard work, right? If you want to get in shape, it's not a result. You will never be able to buy a pill on the market that in the long run gets you in shape and pays off. It's not going to happen. Maybe there's some things that can help you, but ultimately, getting in shape is about working out, exercise, and eating right. There's no way to get around that. There's no way to get around that. As a matter of fact, if you read the fine print of every bottle, of every diet, at the bottom it basically says, do this along with exercise and eating right. Right? I always laugh because I've done every diet underneath the sun. And there was one diet where you drank these shakes, right? And here's the reality. If you follow the diet the way it was written, you could have went to McDonald's and had 2 actual shakes for breakfast and lunch, eat a reasonable meal, exercise, and ate right, and you would have lost weight. You didn't need their shakes. It was still the same principle. A good job comes with hard work, whether it's learning or working your tail off. Love might start at first sight, but it is maintained and it's done through hard work. You have to put yourself out there. You have to get your heart broken. The only way that love happens is when you learn to trust someone. The only way you trust someone is when you put yourself out there. And that is hard. That is hard. We talked a little bit about that last week. The good stuff is not commodity. It's a result of hard work. Be careful of religion that says basically God is a commodity. Do this and God's going to bless you. You'll have no problems whatsoever. Just sign up here. Just give there. Because they're selling you something. That's not where the good stuff comes in. Lastly, the good stuff in life requires a commitment to continually stoke the fires. And what I mean is this. If you were living in a time where you needed a fireplace to keep your house warm, okay? You have to continue, what they say, stoke the fire. You have to continually put, or else it'll burn out. It's hard to start a fire. It's easier to keep it going. You got to continually put wood in to keep it going. Same thing if you're camping, but it happens to be the temperature where if the fire goes out, you're going to freeze. Somebody's got to get up in the middle of the night and put more fire on the wood every couple hours or so, or else everybody will freeze. The good stuff in life is that way. You can't just do it once and it just keeps going. You just don't exercise 1 week. You don't just get in shape and then, I'll maintain from here on out. You got to keep stoking the fire. And that is what's kind of wrong right up front with what Jeroboam does. It just shows right away that Jeroboam reduces religion to a set of rules that will please God. He doesn't stop and think, I wonder if God will be happy about this. Because he's not passionate about it. He's not stoked. As a matter of fact, I can tell you when a relationship turns. A relationship begins to turn. Even after people get married, it begins to turn when all of a sudden they stop stoking the fires. They stop getting dressed up for when they go out to eat. They stop planning the extra special things, and they just kind of go on autopilot. That doesn't mean that they don't do something for their anniversary, because quite frankly, you need something to post on Facebook. It just means that, because of money or whatnot, you can just buy it, you just get a package or da 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 da. But there's not that. And I'll tell you, this is challenging for me because I, by God's grace, have married a bride who's really easy to please, and she doesn't really care about all those frills and stuff. But I challenge myself because it's important for me, because if I stop doing that extra stuff, if I stop thinking about, what will just knock her socks off, the fire begins to go out. Be careful of a church that says, you know what, man, basically just serve, help people out, and they just begin to minimize. No, keep your eyes on Jesus and follow him. Stoke that fire. It is about God. It's about love for him. And if God says go to Jerusalem, if God says give up every Sunday morning, if God says give your life away, give your life away. And guess what? You'll have the best things in life. There's going to come a day, and I know this is true because, by the way, it's true for everybody here. There's going to come a day when you're out on your own, and you're going to be tempted. If you say, I'm still going to do this church thing. I still believe in God. But it's going to be tempting to find a church that tells you what you want to hear. It says, you know what? These standards that you kind of grew up with, you know what? There's an easier, just all you need to do is basically be this way, and God's going to bless you, and you're good to go. Just be a good person, and God's happy with that. Don't fall for that Trojan horse. And I would remind us, it happens as you get older. We just begin to compromise, and that we slowly move in that Trojan horse, and our faith begins to grow cold. Watch out for the Trojan horse of an easy religion, because an easy commitment usually ends up as no commitment at all. And it ain't the Father's fault. He took on the sin. He died the death. If we truly love him, we'll stoke that fire. And we'll recognize that Trojan horse and reject it out of our lives. Amen? Father God, this is one of those things that's easy to say and hard to live. And I think every one of us, including myself, dear God, have let in this Trojan horse in our lives, in at least one room of our hearts. Forgive us. Will you give us the power to just take one step today in rejecting that easy religion, rejecting those lies, dear Father. On the other hand, dear God, I thank you that it's also not a religion of you better get it all right, but that Christ died so that we may experience grace. May we rest in that grace, but may it provide for us a motivation, a passion to pursue you even more faithfully. Will you that work in us and through us, in Jesus' name, amen.